Hello. Welcome to the session on AI's revolution on competitive intelligence, maximizing impact while managing risk. Today we have Rick Saini, Vice President of Innovation at 3Victors and ATPCO, and we have Chris Phillips, Chief Commercial Officer at ATPCO as well. Welcome to the stage, gentlemen.
Thanks.
So we're talking about a really big topic today, one that's close to my heart, and probably a big elephant in the room of many companies and industries throughout, and that, of course, is AI. So before we get into the questions, I'd like to do a quick pulse check with all of you. If you can take out your event app, we have a question for you. How many times have you thought about AI's impact on your business in the last month?
Interesting.
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah, so a good group of you are thinking about it a couple of times at least a month, and quite a few of you are also thinking about it every day. That makes sense. I mean, I kind of, the analogy I use is like Legos, right? They're in your drawer, they're all disassembled, and you open the drawer and you think, oh, what do I do about this? How do I know it's important, I should be building something and using it, and then you close the drawer again, but it's still there. So I'm hoping Rick and Chris can kind of help us in that today. I also have one more ask. While you have the event app out and open, please post questions. We'll try to get to them towards the end. Sound good? All right, gentlemen, ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
All right, Rick, you and 3Victors, you're experts in the field of data, AI, and the future of airline retailing. So a simple question to you. What does our future look like?
Yeah, the simple question always first, right? What's the future? I think I'd like to think of it kind of in two parts. I think it's the airline retailer side and the consumer side. I think on the airline retail side, you're going to see a lot of continued investment in dynamic offer creation, and rightly so. People want personalized offers. I think Alex actually this morning summed it up very well. There's this, if you remember his graph, he has one with product decoupled with price, and where people are on the spectrum of this journey into dynamic offers from the lower left corner to the top right corner. And with 25%, I think the stat he quoted was 25% of the offers being dynamic this morning. I think that will continue to grow, and there'll be significant investment. In fact, I'll probably make the case today that you should invest even more in this particular area. I think for me, the huge sea change is on the consumer side. So I liken it to what happened in the late 90s when basically the way you bought an airline ticket was go to a counter or to call somebody on the phone. And then all of a sudden we had Expedia and Travelocity, and now you had self-service booking tools with the internet. Huge sea change that occurred there, and we're about to see this same sea change in 2025 with what's called agents, and hopefully we'll talk more about agents. I have some stuff to show off, I think, today as well. But so essentially think of sort of this future where you sit down and you task a swarm of agents who are PhD level, shopping for air travel, looking for deals, gathering data, looking through your emails, looking through your social media presence, looking at all your documents.
I hope not.
Facebook famously says they have around 1,000 data points that you can target for retailing. These agents will know literally billions of data points about you and will actually dutifully go out there and achieve a task of finding and filling out your vacation calendar for the year. You don't even have to pick up your finger. That's the vision that's out there. By the way, I've seen dozens of startups try this over the last 15 years. And finally, we're at the technology stack location where this can occur.
All right, that's pretty fascinating. Chris, from your perspective, how should airlines be thinking about this stuff?
Yeah, They need to be thinking about it, in my opinion, much more aggressively than they are. Rick just introduced this concept of an AI agent, which hasn't gotten a lot of discussion up to now. But what airlines that we've been engaged with on AI have been mostly focused on, which are very good use cases, are how do I get more efficient? How do I use AI to sort through all this data and make sense of it? Terrific use cases. What we're not seeing enough of and not hearing enough conversations around is what's the impact of AI on my business? Not what, it's all about what do I do with it, go out to the market, but not what's the market going to do to me. And I think that's going to have a profound effect on what happens. There were 2 recent industry conferences by HubSpot and Salesforce.com where the focus of the whole conversation was the impact of these AI agents and how it's going to impact every business in the world in a way that they've not experienced before, even like what Travelocity and Expedia did to the airlines when online commerce started. The sea change is going to be significantly more, in my opinion. So to me, that's the area where airlines have an opportunity to really start thinking more broadly.
All right, thank you. So we're talking about AI agents. So Rick, can you help describe agents for me and everybody here?
So my university students, I give the technical answer, which is they have to put it on their exams, which is it's a collaborative, self-learning AI that takes actions to achieve goals. That's the definition. Now, that's a ridiculous for this particular group. So I thought maybe what I would do is actually show you what I do next, which is let me show you how to create one in 3 minutes or less. So I fired up ChatGPT the other day, and we took a video. Warm-up question to ChatGPT. Do you think finding airline ticket deals is a good thing for agents to be done? And dutifully, by the way, ChatGPT, even if it doesn't know the answer, will hallucinate an answer for me. But generally, it's in pretty good shape. The most recent version is really good at doing what it's doing. And it says, yeah, this would be a good idea. We should do this, and here's kind of why we should do it. So I'm like, well, what would you create for me in the form of these agents, and what kinds of agents would you sort of create on my behalf or that need to do this? And it dutifully goes out and thinks for a little bit, and it comes up with 17 different agents it's going to deploy potentially on my behalf, and they span a variety of things you can see here: error handling agents and API management agents and optimization agents. So I'm like, hey, my class doesn't really understand every one of these, so let's group them a little bit and see what sort of categories that those agents are in. And so it dutifully goes out and says, hey, I can group these for you. That's a good idea. Let's group them for you. You can see data acquisition agents, user preferences, where they're going to learn everything, analytics after it's gathered data, security, et cetera. So it groups those things together. And then the coup de grace, which is in less than 3 minutes, I then go ahead and said, well, go ahead and generate the code for me. So it'll go out there, dutifully go out, and finds the best tools in the marketplace at the moment. And as we'll watch it go through here, it takes a little bit of time with the newer versions of these tools. It goes out and generates the code for me to actually create an agent framework to do all these functions. So hopefully that scares you a little bit, but also gives you an idea of what's coming. And they've been working on this for the most part all year long. I think we're going to see a lot of this in the first quarter of next year. And by the tail end of 2025, almost everybody will have some form of this from Google, from Microsoft, from Apple, and a variety of things. There are a lot of decisions to be made in the next several months about how airlines decide to tackle this.
All right, well, thank you, Rick. I mean, it warms my heart as a technologist to always see code flash up on the screen. All right, so that sounds, thank you for that, for explaining kind of in general terms AI agents. So Rick, what does this mean for airlines and travelers and customers?
Yeah, I think a few things. For airlines, I think that you're going to find soon, in the next 6 months or so, you're going to have what would be the equivalent of your most busy shopping day every day of the week. Because these agents are going to shop way more times than a consumer, because they have 24/7, they can do that shopping, and your infrastructure at an airline needs to be ready for that onslaught of shopping requests that's about to occur. I think data is the key in these things as well. So it's important what you put on your websites and do those things. So you want to continue to sort of move along the offer and dynamic offer pipeline because it's going to recognize some of the dynamic nature of what's going on. Just generally with inventory management has a dynamic nature anyway when it comes to ticket sales. And that investment's going to be super important and to make sure, and on the flip side, there's a lot of anti-crawling software on these websites. You gotta be really careful that you're not actually knocking off a true consumer because the human intent is a proxy now, not an actual human. And the human doesn't move the mouse around. The actual AI will understand the page and then pick the next item and do these things without doing what would normally look like a human. You might get kicked off the system. So you don't want to kick off your customers when you're doing anti-crawling on your websites, for example. I think, again, as we go through these examples, it's really about having good quality data. The thing I will note, too, is that these AIs can and will read your imagery on your websites. So if you have images on your websites, they're multimodal. They might match those up with images you took 4 years ago that are in your social media feed, for example. And that might be the key and trigger for them to recommend that because ultimately these things are going to be on a phone-type device. And they're going to offer up 2 or 3 things after doing all this extensive research.
Oh, okay. So I'm starting to see now the linkage of AI and imagery and how it might process some of my social media posts as well. And this is great about the data. So we're seeing a theme here throughout today's conversation around the importance of data. And definitely ATP going through Victor's are focused on that later on. Your comments on visual content is also really important, right? Later today, we have another session on visual assets that we'll discuss today, and tomorrow in the customer breakouts, we'll go into that as well. So data matters a lot. How should we view the role of data related to this?
Yeah, I think it's moving so fast. So I teach this, so it's crazy. I can't even keep up each semester when I teach this. It's moving so fast. So I think, first of all, you're not too early, you're not too late, but you need to start thinking about it a little bit. I think that's an important part. The data itself can be extremely dirty and unclean. It's about cleaning up your data, having a good data strategy within your organization, democratizing data within your organization, using companies like ATPCO to be that good quality data filter, for example. I'd like to pitch you for our business at 3 Victors too, for doing that and join us along our journey as we tackle these problems. But generally, it's about having a good quality data strategy at the very underpinnings, and then having an understanding that AI is going to start rolling out in pretty major ways over the next 6 or 7 quarters, and what that looks like and what that might look like and how you might be able to adjust what you're doing to facilitate that. For example, maybe you actually, inside your webpage, have a little note to the AI, hey, if you really want to get my shopping data, maybe use this so it doesn't pound my website into submission, for example. Just like they've done with Google in the past when Google crawls your website, for example. So there's a bunch of things that can be done in order to do that. I think on the revenue management side, having really good offers, lots of attributes, moving on to this whole offer creation momentum that's there is going to be really good for those agents to then digest that information and make decisions more in tune with what a consumer doesn't see immediately, but also based on their history, which is an important piece of the puzzle.
Right. Thank you. Chris, so you're out there talking to airlines, customers, industry partners almost every day. For everyone in the audience, what questions should we be asking ourselves?
It's a long growing list. The stuff that Rick has highlighted about the pace of change is making this one a faster pace than we're used to in this industry. So I'll use an example. When the OTA started, it was a bit of a slow boil. They were introduced, we figured out what they were doing, things changed over time. The pace of this change is going to be radically different. It's going to be almost overnight compared to what we're used to, and we need to be prepared for it. So commercially, some of the airlines that we've talked to and had discussions around, are really trying to rethink at a marketing level, how do I talk to my customers? Right now, airlines are out there really promoting their brand, saying, come to myairline.com. OTAs, metas are out saying, hey, shop, I've got the best content, come shop with me, I'll get you the best price, et cetera. Those days might be over based on what Rick says, because the consumer is no longer going to be going to 5, 10 websites to go figure out where do I want to go, how do I want to do it. They're not going to invest all that time. They're literally just going to say into their phone, find my best flight options for this trip to Turkey. And it's off to the races. And how you market to that is very different than saying, come to my website, because they're talking to some unknown agent at this point. And you've really got to rethink what's the impact on that. From a sales and distribution standpoint, it's even more complex. Today, you know who your travel agents are. We've gone from the 1990s, when we go and knock on the doors of the mom and pop agency on the high street, to chasing OTAs and metas around the world to figure out how do I be relevant on their site and ensure that my content is getting displayed properly. Now you've got to figure out who do I need to talk to ensure that all of these agents, all of these bots are actually reaching places where I'm present and not going to places where I'm not, so I don't get cut out of the entire conversation. It's a new thought process that's going to happen quickly, and we don't have the kind of mechanisms we traditionally had, where if an OTA showed up or a meta showed up, they got to go to IATA or ARC to get a number. They got to go to a GDS to get the content. So we had a tracking mechanism. Don't have that anymore. These bots have no identifier. We don't know who they are, where they're going to come from, where they're located, who we talk to. So figuring out that paper trail is going to be an exercise to ensure that your content remains relevant in those situations. And there's long tail things. I'll give you a silly example, but a major U.S. airline, when the OTA started, didn't quite understand what was happening. But a little known fact, but Travelocity, that was owned by Sabre at the time, it was based in Dallas, but they actually ticketed all of their tickets I think in San Antonio, Texas. The ARC location for Travelocity was in San Antonio. This major airline had a sales incentive program based on revenue growth in their geographic territories. The sales rep for this airline for 2 years got exponential bonuses based on this crazy revenue growth. Didn't know who Travelocity was, never talked to them, not involved in Travelocity at all, but those types of impacts just aren't known at the time. And it took 2 years to figure it out then. We don't have 2 years to figure that out now. This stuff's going to happen overnight, and we got to be ready for it. So those kinds of conversations on how do I talk to my customer, how do I talk to the industry to ensure that I'm where I need to be, and how do I engage these new companies that aren't in our ecosystem, our traditional airline ecosystem, to ensure that I'm available for sale and I'm able to meet my objectives.
Yeah, I would add to that too. A simple use case that everybody knows is that, I forget who, I think I was talking to Steve Hafner, I don't know, this was 10 years ago, and asked him how many people click on, I had Kayak at the time, how many people click on the first entry of every low-fare shopping engine? And it's like 70% of the people pick the first one. The good news about this technology is that agent will know there's something $3 more that has 63 more attributes that are way better for that consumer. So it's actually going to be on page 66 and pulling out those itineraries, which is completely different behavior than you see in low-fare shopping, for example.
Yeah, so I can kind of see the linkages to the distribution strategy, and we just had the prior session to ours where they talked about distribution. We had Melanie from North Atlantic talking about what you're saying, that data science is almost as important, maybe even more important than their inventory, the number of airlines that they have. So it's all kind of coming together very, very rapidly. Chris, so ATP has a few initiatives to address this in the future, right? Could
Yes.
you kind of describe those?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we're working on right now is the work that we've picked up with 3Victors after the acquisition last year, and it's been a tremendous learning environment for us. The knowledge in the background that Rick and the team have brought to understand these impacts of AI are they're hard to keep up with. Rick sends me new articles, mostly AI generated, I think, but just the profound changes that are happening on a daily basis in our space. And what we're hopeful to do for the industry is help make some sense of what's going on. In a world of fragmented distribution that the last panel kind of talked about, and in a world of dynamic offers, the old world that we're used to, that a lot of people will say a lot of things about how the legacy distribution models in the industry worked. But one thing that people did like, and I think, if I asked for everybody to raise their hand if they agreed, I think we would get a high level of consensus, but it was trusted, and people knew what was going on. So if I filed a fare in the old world, I knew where it got distributed, and I knew what was going to get displayed. I had confidence and comfort in that it worked. In the new world, where I have fragmented content, and I'm changing my fares dynamically or continuously, do I really know where my content's going, what price is being displayed, how it's being displayed? I don't have that same level of awareness or confidence. So what Three Victors is helping do is using AI is helping identify for airlines and distribution channels, what is actually available in the market right now on a real-time basis? How's it look on a competitive basis to other players in the market? Is it doing what I think it should? Is it being distributed and displayed the way that I think it needs to be? Without hiring 50 people to just ping on websites all day long and figure out how things are changing, which is inefficient and difficult to scale, we're going to use technology, and we're able to show airlines and channels in real time what's happening. So powerful opportunity to help keep up with this pace of change as the airlines are evolving their distribution and pricing strategies.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Completely agree.
I see some questions popping up. So this is really incredible, pretty exciting, and it seems like the future is closer than we thought. Let me see if I can kind of summarize some of the key points that we've learned. Visual data is just as important as other data. Historical data matters as well, and the power of AI is obviously the fuel of AI is data. So the power of AI is kind of like, it's only as good as the quality of the data that's being fed to it. We've also learned that there is urgency. Chris, you mentioned Salesforce, CEO of other industries, indicating that this is the year of AI agents, and those who act quickly will kind of get the first mover advantage. And Chris also mentioned some of the things that ATPCO is doing to make it easier to manage data. All right, so we have a few questions. We'll take a crack at them. First one, how can we leverage AI, ML, deep learning to create products for Gen Z and consumers of the future, 2050 and beyond? How do we see ourselves evolve to get there? Who'd like to take that on?
I'll let the professor take that one.
Yeah, so I think, again, the interesting thing about it is the consumers are going to have AI way before everybody in the back office has AI. And so part of it is leveraging AI to be the other side of the equation. These agents are collaborative in their nature. They like to reach out. And so on the flip side, you want to have the same agents understanding it, understanding when the agents come back, their patterns, or who are they shopping on behalf of, for example. Are they logging into the site on behalf of the consumer into your loyalty program? A variety of things you can do on the, so it's not like it's a zero-sum game where agents are all talking to agents, but you need to start deploying some of those technologies. And deep learning is one of the techniques to goal-based, typically. So if you tell it your goal is to give a better experience to the agents that are coming to your site along with the consumers, it will go out and dutifully try to do that for you. So you need to leverage the technology in a way And I'll have to admit, to some degree, I've been a Luddite. I was a little bit slow to the game, but I do teach this at a university around data science and data and these things, and it's just mind-boggling how fast this is moving. I've never seen anything move this fast.
So on top of large language models, what other AIs could be applicable to airline retailing?
Yeah, large language models, I think what you'll find is over the next few months, it'll be, there's like 10 companies or 12 companies in the world that can afford to train these large language models. Mm-hmm. So what you're going to do is they're going to use those models to then train smaller models for specific tasks, legal tasks, operational tasks, airline planning tasks. So you'll actually take and create a much smaller model from these larger models. So that gives you two things. These large models can be very expensive. So the question is, how much do these things cost? So when you start to look at the cost of these things, they may look cheap, but when you start to deploy chatbots and a variety of things and they get popular, they're not so cheap. So you want to create these smaller models that you can do that. You can bring in your own data with those as well. So even your own proprietary data that you have, like your CRM systems, can be put into these systems and used, for example, after a person logs in, that particular small model can actually help interact with that person or their agent, for example. So there's lots of ways they can use the technology. It's very complicated to train models and do a bunch of stuff, so I wouldn't recommend that for the weak of heart. But there's lots of these agents that are going to be created on their behalf, and that's what you need to be using. Just think of them, I always think of it as like there's a conductor and you snap your fingers and the string section shows up, and then the percussion section shows up, and you can start to conduct those things. You want to be the conductor.
Okay, right. We have another question. Collecting and sharing data is sensitive and subject to various regulations. Could this be considered as a challenge for AI adoption in some areas? Really good question. Chris, you want to take a crack at that?
You know, I think it will be a bit of a challenge, but because it is consumer-led, you know, the consumer's making the choice to go do this, they're going to share whatever they want to share and go from there. So, you know, the AI engines will need to be sensitive to what they're doing, but this one is one of those the consumer has opted in to ask for these things, and you know, it should help navigate a lot of that concern versus, you know, a consumer going to a site and deciding what to share or whether or not they know they're sharing. They're going to be actively telling these agents what they want, and they'll have to decide if they want to give the information required to get the best answers.
Rick, you want to take it?
Yeah, and I tend to agree. I mean, people that have data, for example, I'll give you an example in coding. There's sites like Stack Overflow and a variety of GitHub.com, and you now have to pay. You have to pay Elon if you want Twitter data, and he's trying to keep it proprietary because it's got a lot of data. So there's going to be not only private data, but there's going to be regulation on some of this, and we don't know where that's heading yet. In the EU, it's much more restrictive, for example, than it is in the United States and in China, for example. So there's going to be a lot of issues around it. The hard thing to do at this point is the entire internet, for the most part, is completely encoded in these models already, up until a certain date in 2023, right? So it's kind of hard to unlearn those things that are already in those models already. They've already essentially memorized the internet. Now, the problem is what's happening yesterday and the day before and a few weeks ago. They don't have as much knowledge of that. That's where agents come in to fix some of that. So they're gathering up some of this newer quality data. So it's hard to unlearn what's already been learned. So the genie's sort of out of the bottle when it comes to that. But there will be definitely getting your own private data into these models is going to be super easy to do, and you'll be able to make decisions on those things with your own private data much quicker. If you have a really good data strategy, it makes that even easier.
All right, good. This is an interesting question. So are AI agents going to replace meta search engines as an entry point for price exploration?
Yeah, I think they are going to push them to kind of a second tier in the process. because rather than the consumer going out to airline.com or Skyscanner, Kayak, Google to look, they're going to ask the question. The black box behind that agent is going to decide. You know, it may do it based on what it knows about you, but it may not. We don't know what those algorithms look like. We don't know what it's learned. They could be pointing consumers anywhere in the world, you know, based on how commerce works today. And the starting point, you know, is going to change. Rick shared, I'm gonna give you some highlights about what you'll learn if you join us tomorrow in our Three Victors session. But Rick throws these stats out, and they're a little bit alarming, but they're really compelling. Somebody just came out with a new AI agent, and I think you said there were 30 million people within the first, I may get the number wrong, but in the first week they had 30 million people.
Yeah, Google, it's called Notebook LM. If you haven't tried it, you should try it. It creates podcasts from your documents. So if you have a complex document, it will go out there and create, and you can say, I want you to have the audience be like it's the people that are attending Focus Summit, and will automatically create a podcast. You can listen to it in your car on the way to the office, or so some really cool technologies. And GPT was by far the most widely adopted package in the first 4 weeks in the history of applications.
So the pace and scale of this is pretty staggering, and it's going to hit us faster than we probably realize. So yeah, I do think that it is going to change the start points, and how we react to those things are important, and what we learn from it is important. Here's another stat I'm going to steal from Rick for tomorrow, just to, again, get your interest in the Three Victors session. But 70% of all shops, I know especially in the NDC world, look-to-book's a problem. The look-to-book ratios for the industry continue to escalate, and as airlines jump into the NDC world, many don't realize the cost and impact of what they have to bear. The GDS isn't covering that for you anymore. You have to cover your own look-to-book cost and impact. It's significant. When you got an unknown number of unknown agents out pinging these things, the look-to-book ratio is only going to get worse. So how you think about what's going on in the marketplace and understand what's real shopping intent versus all these bots hitting me for the same thing, understanding those things will be really important for commercial teams to leverage. So it will change, in my opinion, but it's going to impact everything down the line as well.
All right, we'll take one more question. So we talked about data quality, so let's take that one. How do you ensure data quality integrity across different systems, from booking platforms to in-flight operations? Are you having any specific challenges integrating AI solutions?
Always a challenge, for sure, and it's never easy. Data quality, I think, is the most important aspect of these things. Clearly, we have this philosophy at Three Victors is we have to have golden data, so we want benchmark data. I always liken it to an Apple Watch that knows your heartbeat, and if you somehow veer off your natural and normal heartbeat over time, it might actually send you a message or even make a phone call on your behalf. So you need to have these benchmarks and what I call the golden data that gives you an idea, because then you want to do anomaly detection off that. So if there's anomalies that occur across that data, you can then say, hey, something's off with the quality of my data. I think an important part of it too is you don't want ridiculous amounts of data. There's one school of thought in AI, just give it everything, just whatever you want to do and it'll sift it all out for you. I'm not in that camp, by the way. I think you have to have good quality data, so you use AI to actually improve the quality of the data. Most people don't know this, but like ChatGPT-4, 75% of the data, approximately, of ChatGPT, what it was trained on, was synthetic data generated by GPT-3. Because there's no more data in the world to actually incorporate. They're transcribing videos and audio now just to have enough data to train these models. And that includes every language in the world. So they're actually running up against, so they're actually using synthetic data. The new version probably will have more synthetic data that's done. So it's about using AI to train AI. We need to be using AI internally for these things.
All right, thank you. All right, so where do we go from here for today? We look forward to hearing more on the stage about data innovation, There's a session on dynamic offers and AI, and we also have a session on visual content. And then there'll be sessions tomorrow, so that could be the customer breakouts or the workshops, where you'll dive into practical application of data for your business. So I want to thank Chris and Rick. Great job, gentlemen. And then for all of you, we'll be heading into lunch, but I do have a challenge for everyone. Grab someone new and talk about AI. It's a favorite topic of mine and ours, and it'll be some interesting insights that you might gain from it. So again, I want to thank our panel, and I want to thank all of you. Thank you so much.